In your view, how's he doing so far?
Well, I think he's done pretty well so far, but direct examination, particularly where he's been prepared by the prosecution, is usually a piece of cake, and there are no surprises. And he testified quite consistently with what the other witnesses have testified to and what the documents, those mute witnesses, what they say. But of course, cross-examination is the ultimate test. There's an art to cross-examination, and this is particularly the type of cross-examination which will be destructive in nature and designed to destroy Michael Cohen's credibility. And we'll have to see how that plays out. That hasn't started yet.
Interesting revelations today, Jim. Cohen testified that during the 2016 presidential election, and we have to remind everybody that that is partly what we're talking about here, is election interference, at least through the eyes of Alvin Bragg. Stormy Daniels threatened to come forward during the campaign. Donald Trump was furious about this because, according to Michael Cohen, he thought it had been handled 5 years earlier. Trump told Cohen to drag out negotiations, just get past the election, is the quote. I win, it has no relevance because I'm president. If I lose, I don't really care. Jim, that's the case. What does the defense do with that in cross this week?
Well, they try to show that Cohen is not to be believed, that he made up the story, and Trump never said that. He may have made some remark about Stormy Daniels, but that's not the issue. If they don't believe Cohen because he is a serial liar, just like Trump, then they're going to reject, or they'll have the power to reject everything that he says. And without Cohen, there's really no case because the prosecution can't tie Trump in directly with the hush money payoff scheme.
Well, that, I guess, is what we've consistently heard, Jim, the idea that Michael Cohen helps put all the different puzzle pieces together after you've had the testimony from the people who are actually handling the facilitation of these payments to Stormy Daniels and talking about the salacious nature of this alleged affair, which is why perhaps Trump, according to prosecutors, had the incentive to bury this thing. So if Michael Cohen really is the linchpin here, the prosecution has suggested that they could wrap up their side of things this week. Do you expect he will be the last witness that we hear from?
He could very well be the last witness because I don't, and other lawyers who are experienced in criminal trial practice don't expect Trump to take the stand. His lawyer would be criticized if he allowed him to take the stand because there's so much material on which they could cross-examine him. It is more likely than not that they'll argue reasonable doubt without Trump testifying. So this trial could very well wrap up this week or maybe early next week.
Wow. The conventional wisdom, Jim, and I'm sure you've heard it, is that this is the weakest of the 4 cases possibly facing Donald Trump. It's looking like some of these trials and the other cases may never happen or would be moved past the election. Do you agree with that assessment?
I don't know that it's necessarily the weakest. I think it's an important case because it involves election interference, which is the crucial element here. And election interference in 2016 was kind of the curtain raiser, the gatekeeper for the election interference which occurred in 2020 and 2021, culminating in the January 6th insurrection. So I think it's a very important case. I think the paper trail is very impressive. I mean, Trump himself signed 9 of the 11 checks that went to Michael Cohen and were cast as payment for legal fees, which they never were. Cohen never functioned really as a lawyer here. He functioned as a gutter campaign manager, trying to kill stories that might be unfavorable to Trump in the run-up to the 2016 election. So it's a very important case, and it's an important case because it really shows the character of Trump, the presidential candidate, who is seeking to regain the Oval Office and be the leader of our country. An important question for the voters is whether Trump is acquitted here or he's convicted, and particularly if he's convicted of a felony, whether this is the sort of man you want in the Oval Office. This is the sort of man you want in your home at night. This is the sort of man who's going to talk to you about a very troubled world and who will evolve the policies and elaborate the policies of how to deal with it.
Well, and Jim, arguably, whether or not he's acquitted or convicted, the American public, should they choose to pay attention, has already heard very salacious detail of an affair with a porn star, for example. There was a lot made last week when Stormy Daniels was testifying about whether or not the defense didn't object enough to her testimony, given that she went over and above what even the judge expected her to be detailing on the stand. They didn't object much to Michael Cohen today at all. What do you make of that?
Well, of course, there has to be a basis for the objection. Stormy Daniels probably went too far in describing the details of what happened. As a matter of fact, for purposes of the case, it doesn't really matter whether she hadn't sex with Stormy Daniels or not, because he was willing to pay $130,000, and he admittedly, in a tweet, paid Cohen to reimburse him for the payoff to Stormy Daniels. Now, why did he do it? The jurors have been asked to use their common sense, as all juries are. And what does your common sense tell you? I mean, Michael Cohen didn't benefit from the payoff of $130,000. The only person who benefited from it was Donald Trump, because it kept Stormy Daniels quiet in the heels of the Billy Bush tape until after the election. And that's why the money was paid.